Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. If you're watching back on replay, type replay in the comments and let us know that you were here. We would love to engage and dialogue with you after the broadcast, and thank you for watching. So today we are talking about smart recovery. We are rolling up our sleeves and we are digging in and discussing what is smart recovery. And we have Justin Watts here with us. He is a PhD. His PhD is in counselor education and supervision with a minor in addiction research. He's also a professor here at UNT. And we are really excited to have him on today to talk with us about smart recovery. So we are going to just jump right in. And as you are joining us, even if you are on replay, be sure to say hi and hello. Let us know where you're coming in from. And if you have ever used smart recovery, if you're familiar with it or you've been trained in it, type SMART in the comments and let us know that you have some awareness of or familiarity with this particular pathway. As we know, there are many pathways to recovery, and so this is one of them, and I wanted to make sure that we all knew about that and had some more information. So we're just going to jump in and get started talking about, first of all, what is smart recovery?
Okay, so I want to be very clear that I'm not speaking on behalf of Smart Recovery. I'm basing this as off of my training as a Smart Recovery facilitator, and also some of the research I've done over the last couple of years with the team at Penn State. Smart Recovery stands for Self-Management and Recovery Training, and what this is a very specific approach that utilizes aspects of cognitive behavioral therapy, rational emotive behavioral therapy, and also motivational interviewing. And so what it does is provide supports. It works just like a peer support, similar to 12-step models, where individuals can come in and get useful resources to help support long-term recovery. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes, yeah, great. Okay. And as we are going through this, if you have questions about something that we are discussing, something Justin has said, please go ahead and type that in the comments and we'll be sure to get back with you. If you're live, we'll talk about it live. And then if you are on replay, we'll be sure to answer that in the comments afterwards. Okay, so what makes smart recovery a best practice or an evidence-based approach?
Well, I think one of the unique things about Smart Recovery is that the philosophy of this program changes as research changes. Over the last 30, 40 years, we've seen an uptick in the type of therapies that are used. When we look at behavioral therapies, those were huge for a long time. Then we started with cognitive behavioral therapies, and now we have this third wave of approaches that are coming in. And so what we know is motivation is central when we're talking about getting into recovery. And so Smart Recovery utilizes aspects of motivational interviewing, which is there's a large basis of research. Cognitive behavioral therapy is also used in addition to a rational emotive behavioral therapy. So those are three of the approaches that would probably have some of the biggest evidence as far as empirically supported for not only getting people into recovery, but sustaining, long-term recovery.
So they're using those principles as part of the system.
Absolutely. And those principles adapt as research comes out and finds other approaches that might be effective. The unique thing is that this program's philosophy adapts and changes with that.
Okay, awesome. And how is smart recovery useful for individuals who are seeking recovery?
So we actually did I was part of a research study when I started my doctoral program at Penn State with Dr. Deirdre Sullivan there. And she did a national survey actually of people who participate in smart recovery. And what she found was that people really identify with this philosophy, that they found that the core components of cognitive behavioral therapy, namely changing our thoughts, to have an impact on our feelings, which in turn has an impact on our behaviors. People really related to that and found that was very useful. Some other things that are sort of broad, though, that I think that a lot of times people get so hung up on the philosophy of peer support groups, and really that doesn't matter. What research shows is attendance period in a peer support group of some type consistently enhances remission rates. But when it comes to smart recovery in particular, particular, I think the important thing that we found from this study is that the philosophy itself is what people really related to. Some people were, I'm not going to say opposed to the 12-step model, but maybe they didn't relate to it as well. And so when we look across peer support groups as a whole, there's a lot of general mechanisms of change that are present within all groups that enhance remission. Social support, changing, having something to do, having some structure, having positive modeling related to, specific things that, might help negotiate a situation that might be trying. Those sorts of things are there, and they're present across all groups. But what research has shown is that, really the theoretical piece is such a small part of it. And if that's what somebody's going to either say yes or no, I'm going to attend peer support groups at all, I think we as practitioners and we as counselors, it's our job to help people find that fit that really works best for them. And so a lot of the people in our study said that, they did not really connect with the 12-step model. And so they had trouble, with that. So some people attend both, 12-step and smart recovery. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So the philosophy there was really important for people.
I know I didn't even introduce myself at the beginning, but I am a LPC, a licensed professional counselor. I'm Carrie Breedlove, by the way. I guess I should have said that at the beginning. But I was really relating as you were saying, some people just don't connect with certain types, maybe of peer support groups, whether it be 12-step or some other type. And I've had individuals that have come through, my office, in the past that, said, well, I don't want to do that. And they have their reasons, for that. And so it's nice to have some alternatives and to be able to let people know that there's something else out there if maybe the traditional things that you're used to referring people to are not something that individual connects with, to be able to have some alternatives, to let them know about, is great. So speaking of, since we're talking about all these different pathways, what would you say are the biggest differences between smart recovery and other pathways, such as a 12-step program?
Yeah, that's a complicated question. So I would say, as far as the research goes, the research on 12-step approaches, largely Alcoholics Anonymous, has overshadowed other programs. And in turn, they have become default with court systems, with referral. It's just when we use the word peer support, and I believe this is starting to change now, largely what comes to people's mind is a 12-step program. And so really my hope is that, we start looking and learning about these other approaches, just as we did with training and counseling theory, and know what works best for our clients. And so the main differences, I would say, number one, is that smart recovery meetings are led by trained facilitators. They go through an online program with smart recovery. They get support from mentors. They go through kind of a barrage of training components. Some even involve group counseling. So I'm not saying that people in smart recovery are counselors, even though we did a research study on some of the facilitators. I'm also led by Dr. Deirdre O'Sullivan. What we found was that a lot of them are highly educated, and so a lot of them were in the human services profession anyway. But what I do want to say is, yeah, they go through the training, they get these specific approaches, and that's one of the largest things that separates SMART from AA. I would say looking too at AA kind of identifies more so with the disease model, and that addiction is a lifelong issue. And a lot of people would agree with that. And I would say, for some, depending on the severity, that might be the case. But with smart recovery, it's sort of attend meetings as long as they're useful to you. And they also address a lot of different things. Behavioral process addictions. There's a lot of different issues that come through the meetings, as opposed to having a specific meeting that's designated, like Narcotics Anonymous or Overeaters Anonymous, those sorts of things. So I would say the other thing would be sponsorship. SMART doesn't really endorse sponsorships. In fact, it's not that they don't endorse it, it's that they don't utilize that within their programs. So they would say, if that's what you need, you can use another outlet, and one thing might be counseling.
Mm-hmm.
If an individual needs that, additional layer of support or treatment that they seek services
Mm-hmm.
from a counselor,
Mm-hmm.
or they may utilize that function within AA, so it's not
Mm-hmm.
a us or them sort of
Mm-hmm.
approach. It's,
Mm-hmm.
what works for you.
Right.
Um,
One question that's
oh,
coming to my
sure.
mind is what is their stance on medication? Because I know sometimes there's maybe a feel from certain groups
Mhm.
that you shouldn't be on medications if you are coming out of some type of addiction.
Sure.
So what would they say about that?
Sure. And that's a tricky question. I would say within some, every meeting will be different, every facilitator will be different. But as far as the program is concerned, if that's necessary, there's a lot of people who have other types of disabilities, especially when we're looking at mental health, depression, anxiety, largely co-occurring. And so the use of medications to support those sorts of things are supported.
Right.
And then when you're also talking about chronic pain management and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that, I think it's important to know that, that those things are necessary in many cases, but it's important to know, okay, when is this becoming using for emotional pain as opposed to physical pain? So
Mm-hmm.
I think facilitators have to know, when to spot those issues and when additional help might be necessary.
Sure.
Even though these groups aren't, they're looked at as more of an adjunct to other types of treatment or long-term care, they're still the most utilized form of treatment in the United States. And so they're number one. And that's unfortunate. There's a lot of, issues with funding, insurance, and that kind of stuff. That's why this is the case. But I think that just opens the door for more complicated, things coming into the groups.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, great. And then what about, and by the way, if there are questions that you have, feel free to drop them into the chat below. I don't know if we are going to see them here or not, but if we don't see them while we're live, we'll be sure to go back afterwards and address any questions or comments that you have. If you have related to any of this so far, type relate in the comments if you can relate to needing other options for people when it comes to peer support. We would love to hear that from you and know what different pathways you have referred people to. And so lastly, we're going to chat just a little bit, or a couple of last things. What are some practical ways that practitioners, peer specialists, families can incorporate these kind of SMART recovery principles into their interactions with people who are in recovery?
So I think that the biggest thing that I would say is to encourage clients just to go, to make contact, to find a meeting or a group that works for them, because research has shown consistently over the last 30 years that just engagement and peer support alone is highly, highly predictive of remission rates. So I think that if we can instill that confidence in our clients that these groups work, maybe you have had a bad experience here or there, but having knowledge and background about these groups' philosophies, can help us to connect and find options that are going to work for our clients. There's tons of options. There's Women for Sobriety, Celebrate Recovery, that is more of a Christian base to it. There's Smart Recovery, AA. Every group itself, and this is an assignment that I do in one of my classes, is I actually have some of our students go out and they attend a meeting. It can be any meeting, and if they have experience with AA, I ask that they go to another one. And my hope with that, and what it has been a successful project over the course of the last 2 years, but my hope is that they see what it's like to walk in the door to one of these meetings, and they can instill a little bit more of that confidence in their clients, increase that buy-in, and get them going. So having knowledge that, one group even has a different personality than another group. So it might be very fitting or it might not. So don't stop if you have one bad experience.
Right.
The goal really is to find that additional layer of support.
On that point, you were talking about maybe going with someone to a meeting. I know with AA, they'll have open meetings and closed meetings. How is it with Smart Recovery?
I really don't know on that. I know that some of the meetings with this, usually it's going to be mostly people who are in recovery. And with the group structure and layout, they're actively using tools. And so learning about their past, learning how some of the behaviors are maybe not effective or inefficient, or so I would say that these groups may tend to go a bit deeper because they don't fit the typical speaker, listener format. It's a very active type of group where members are actually taking part in learning how to use some of the cognitive behavioral therapy techniques themselves and applying them. So I would say maybe not in situations like that. However, I will say that some of my students have gone who are not in recovery. And as long as they're upfront about it and say, this is what I'm here to do. I'm not here to study you. I'm here to learn about this, to see if this is a referral option. They've been very open to that, at least the meetings that they've taken part in.
That's great.
Yeah.
Do you know if there are any local meetings to our Denton County area?
I know that there are a few in Louisville. But one thing that I forgot to say earlier, that does separate SMART from other types of programs is they do have an online presence as well. So they do have online meetings that people can attend, and that's very useful because they're not as widespread as AA. There's not a meeting every 1 hour or 2 hours in multiple locations in cities. But the thing is if somebody can get online to smartrecovery.org, they can look at the online meeting schedule and they can find something that might work for them. So that's very useful.
Okay, fantastic. We'll also put the link to that in the description here when we're done, smartrecovery.org. I kind of briefly perused their website, and it looked like they had also a lot of forums that were available on different topics, whether it be teens or just women's issues or what have you. So it seemed like there was areas to kind of specialize and kind of find your niche and find a group of people that you could relate to, even in the forums, which I don't know if those were really maybe considered the meetings. They were maybe more just kind of an ongoing discussion board or something like that. So it seemed like there was a lot of opportunity to connect anyway with other people, which is great.
They have great resources.
Excuse me. And then my last question was where we could go to get more information, so we've kind of addressed that. But for anyone who is interested in maybe becoming trained as a facilitator, anything you could say to that or speak to that as to what that process is like?
Sure. I mean, I did that when I was a doctoral student at Penn State, and I would have to say that even I started leading a group for students who had received multiple violations, whether those was related to alcohol or drugs. And I thought the support was tremendous. I went through the program, and even though I knew quite a bit about the content itself, it was still helping me to sort of, brush off some of the dust and get back into leading a group like that. The other thing I would say is that I was assigned a mentor. So I was in Pennsylvania. There's a guy that had been doing Smart Recovery meetings for quite a while in Ohio, and he would email me from time to time to say, hey, how's the group going? Do you need to talk? What kind of supports do you need? And so I still get those emails from them to see if I'm actively leading any groups, to see if I need anything or additional training or support, which I thought was really cool. As far as those resources and training, it was a little time consuming, but I would say it was very thorough, and you actually got to watch live meetings unfolding and apply the content that you were learning there. So that was really useful.
So would you say a portion of the training is in person? And because I did see a thing where it was like an online module that you could do over the course of like 8 weeks. And I don't know if we mentioned it's $75 to get trained as a facilitator, but is there kind of a combination between online and in person that you have to do? Or
well, I would say the in person is more, there's open chat where you can get in sort of like what we're doing now, and you can ask live questions to somebody who's overseeing the facilitating the training. So that was really nice. You don't have to take part in that, and you can do it at your own pace. There were times where I would knock out a couple of modules in a day, but Yeah, so it's at your own pace, but you do have people consistently checking in with you saying, have you logged in yet? Have you done it? So you have people motivating you to get through it.
Little accountability there.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I think that's fantastic that and it looked like online there was this rolling registration, it seemed like. It said something about register by the 15th of every month. So it looked like there was just a way to constantly be able to jump in and get involved, that you didn't have to wait till a certain time of year maybe to take the training or what have you. So I think that's great too. So, well, thank you guys. Oh, and any other things that we missed that you wanted to be sure to say?
Yeah, I think as far as the program philosophy though is concerned, the last thing I wanted to say is, what really separates SMART from 12-step approaches is that, how change occurs. And so with 12-step, it's following the 12 steps. You work that program with your sponsor, and that's how they view change to happen. But with SMART, really the way they view change happening is changing thoughts, changing feelings, changing behaviors, and really addressing those and looking at recovery a little bit more holistically and encompassing a lot of different areas of our life. So that frees up a lot of, space for people to look at, what do I really need? What's important for me specifically? Because we know that the experiences people have gone through on their road to recovery vary so much, and all of their past life experiences. So that sort of, in my opinion, opens the door up a little bit more for someone to have more space, more room to operate, and see what they need specifically to their recovery.
Right. Yeah, that's fantastic. And I love the way that they seem very open to partner with anyone else, whether it be a counselor or another type of peer support, that it seems very inclusive of, hey, let's all work together, to support someone. So that's awesome. Be sure to ask any questions that you have, any comments that you have related to this topic of SMART recovery and multiple pathways. Thank you for joining and watching us, and thank you for coming on live and being here with us. We will be rolling out more interviews to come with different individuals. We're going to have someone speaking on hope, on trauma, on just a variety of different topics related to these principles of recovery. So you'll want to stay tuned for those in the weeks to come. We'll be rolling out one almost every week. So if there's something in particular that you would love to hear about, you think would be a great topic of discussion, feel free to post that in the chat, and we would love to find someone or have you even on. If you have some knowledge and expertise in a particular area that you are passionate about, we would love to have you speak about that here. We can do a dual live broadcast with you. So thanks again for watching, and you guys have a great week.